Hi, I'm Brian Lamort. I became an electrician 20 years ago. I became a heat pump install specialist about 5 years ago. And heat pumps are starting to take over the country. This last year was the first time where there were more new heat pumps installed than there were furnaces and boilers, and that trend is only going to continue. Several years from now, there's going to be hardly any furnaces and boilers being installed at all because of the new trends. I thought it would be useful if I created some content that just isn't included in the install manual, or it's not told to you by the manufacturers. Most contractors don't necessarily know it or take the time to explain things if they do. So my first video is going to be about just what's normal for a heat pump, what to expect, the kinds of noises they make, what's the issue with water in the summer and in the winter, and then just generally how to operate them. So first, noises. If you get one installed in the summer, you're going to find that it's quiet, doesn't really ever make any noise. No changing noises anyway. It's just going to be the same steady fan speed noise. And that's super normal. On the other hand, when you switch the unit to heating mode, it's not going to take very long at all before it makes some strange noises. Some people think it's broken. You hear a gas noise when the unit goes into defrost, which can happen like once or twice an hour. And I had a customer describe it to me recently as the unit made a loud sighing noise. And that's actually about the best description I've heard of it. The outside compressor stops making heat for a moment. It begins to run in reverse. And in the process of doing that, the gases inside go, and you can hear it. It's not super loud, but if you don't know that it's normal, it seems concerning. And if it hasn't made any noise all summer long and it suddenly makes a noise, it bothers people. So I try to give them a heads up in advance that every now and then the unit's going to make some noises. When it does that also, the unit might make a few creaks or slight popping noises. It's because the unit inside is temporarily getting cold when it goes into defrost, and then when it switches back to heat mode, it warms up again, and you're going to get a few little creak, 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 pop type sounds. And that's normal. If those creaking and popping are really loud, that may be an install issue. The backplate might be crooked and it might need to be adjusted. The sound that bothers people the most is related to the more modern high-end Mitsubishi high-wall lines. It's the IC sensor. That tiny little sensor on the front right-hand corner under the bottom of it that slowly twists around back and forth. It's not a camera, but it's an infrared sensor. But it has an actuator in it so that it can slowly rotate. And as it rotates, it makes a little zip, 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 zip noise. And it does that all day, every day. In most places, you do not hear it. If it's a big room, you're not right close to it. But if it's in your bedroom or a really small office, or the unit is a little bit low and it's kind of near you and the house is quiet, it can drive some people insane. I had somebody who was sleeping with headphones like over their head because it was bothering them. And you can turn it off. You don't need to have that function on. It just comes that way from the factory. If you take the remote, you slide the cover down all the way. There's a reset button there. There's also a sensor button. If you aim the controller at the high wall unit and poke the sensor button with a pen, you'll see the icons cycle through. And when both icons disappear, you'll notice that after a moment, the IC sensor turns around backwards. It is now off. It'll stay off unless you hit it with another controller that turns that function back on. And if you do that, it will stop making those zip, zip, zip noises. For my customers in bedrooms and small offices, I always turn those off because I don't even want them to wait a few days and be annoyed before they realize what's happening. For somebody who has a big room, their kitchen, their living room, it's up high, you're probably never going to hear it. And the sensor might actually be able to work better because it's a bigger room. And it might be able to aim the air up, down, left, right, based on what you need. In a smaller room, that sensor can't really do too much anyway, so that is a fantastic time to just turn it off. Another thing to know is that in the summer, when the AC is running, the unit creates water on the inside, and that's going to drain outside the house through the condensate drain. So it's normal to look outside and see water dribbling out of the tube from the bottom of the drain. If you have water dribbling out the front of the unit down your wall, turn it off, call your installer. Something needs to get fixed. It might be clogged, it might not be draining properly, but that's not something you're going to fix yourself as a homeowner. In the wintertime, you're going to find that water intermittently drips off of the compressor. And this really concerns people because they think it's leaking. One of my sons pointed out to me the other day that he thought my unit was leaking. And when I went out and looked, there was water and ice under the compressor. Well, when it goes into defrost mode, it heats up the outside coil, and all of a sudden, all this water just pours out of the bottom. That's normal. That's just capturing the moisture from the air outside because the coil's colder. And if it doesn't defrost, it'll eventually turn into a block of ice. So one of the reasons that we put these units on these big 18-inch stands is so that ice doesn't build up underneath it, plug the hole, and then fill up into the unit. So in the northern climates, that's why we use those big metal stands to get them up off the ground, even though it makes them a little bit more visible. So water on the outside, it's totally normal. It's not refrigerant. It's not something that shouldn't be there. It'd be weird if it didn't happen.